So welcome to session 3. We're going to do some more areas here. So we're going to start on the upper body. So we've done a lot of this lower body area, which is the most painful. So if you've got this far, you're set now. It's not going to get worse than what we've done already. So the first one we're going to do is the quadratus lumborum, which is the lower back area. This is the area that most people will feel a little bit of chronic pain in over their lives. But as I said, don't get too hung up about releasing this area. It's going to be much more important to release your hip flexors and your ITB. And you may feel some pressure taken off your lower back automatically before you even touch this area with a massage. Okay, so I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this. First one is with the ball, and then I'm going to introduce you to a very specialized piece of equipment that you can pick up online called a Theracane. Let me just show you actually before we start. Okay, this is it. I think this is the best massage, self-massage tool to use. If you can pick one up, I think they're about $30 Australian, so I don't know what that would be in your own currency. But anyway, so I'm going to show you this with both the ball and the Theracane. So we'll start off with the ball. So first, lying back, you just stick that in that area. So basically, if you put your fingers in your back here, you'll feel the top of your hip about here, and you'll feel the lower part of your ribs about here. So you should be able to fit about 4 fingers in that gap, and that's where you want to release. So we start low, and then we're just going to work our way up in that soft tissue gap there. We're going to start here. Yourself in again as comfortable position as you can. Now, as you go into your upper body, you get more issues with bones. So lower body, the bones aren't really an issue. You're never going to roll directly on your knee or your femur because your femur's buried underneath quite a lot of muscle anyway. So, but we're going to have some issues with the bones here. So definitely start with a tennis ball because this will be a lot softer. And this is your first real problem area when it comes to bones. So your spinal column has a lot of bony processes coming off of it, as you know, and so we don't want to be hitting that with a hard ball for sure. So try and stay well clear of your spine on this one. So again, start with that tennis ball, and then you can work your way to a hard ball, but you really want to know exactly where everything is before you do that. Okay, and again you can kind of shuffle yourself around to get yourself in the right position here, or you can also just pick the ball with your hand and just move it around. I'll get super comfortable, and again about 2 minutes aside. Again, don't overdo this area, even though it might be an area of pain for you. It's very, very unlikely to be that sore, this area, in anyone. It might be a little bit, but nowhere near as bad as your hip region. Okay, so about 2 minutes. So I'm going to show you on the other side what you can do with this massage stick. I find both are kind of effective. The massage sticks are a little bit more targeted, and you won't have the issue of rolling onto a spinal process with that either, and you won't really with a ball either, but I'm being extra careful with you. So this is how the position I'd get myself in with the Theracane. So you just stick it under in exactly the same position, and then just push it up. You don't need that much pressure. As you can see, I'm just using my finger to push that up, and you can target that area quite well. You can just shuffle it around a bit. Target that area and just push. So this area does tend to be a painful area for many people, but just in everyday life, not with the actual massage itself. So often can feel a little bit more pleasant rather than painful. It may still feel a bit painful for you. Yeah, just working in that gap, in the soft tissue between the rib cage and hips. Oh, that's a nice bit. I'm not really timing it, but I think it's probably about 2 minutes. Okay, so that's quadratus lumborum, or just your lower back area. Next up, this one's a bit of a tricky one, so we're going to start with, we're going to do a bit of a 2-in-1 for this one. We're going to start with the anterior obliques, which is good. They're going to sit in the gap between the bottom of your rib cage and the top of your hip, right on your side here. So there's a gap here which should be just big enough to stick a ball into. Now, the problem with some of you is that you might have this, if you do have this rounded posture of your shoulders, that will depress your rib cage down. So there probably won't be a very big gap here. So there's a technique to getting into this gap so that you don't hit that lower rib, because particularly if you use a hard ball, and even if you use a tennis ball, if you go straight onto that lower rib, it's going to be quite painful. So again, we don't want to hit those bones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start you from the side of the abdomen, and then I'm going to work you into that gap. And then you will feel, if you hit the ribs, it will be a different kind of pain. So try and make sure that you don't hit the ribs, and you just try and get into that gap. Then once we're in that gap, we're just going to hold it there and not move it around too much. You might hold it there for 1 or 2 minutes. Just not move it around, maybe fractions, just tiny fractions. So once you've moved it around for 1 or 2 minutes, then we're going to go from that side area. We're going to go down and follow kind of the top of your hip here, just on the inside of that bone, down towards your groin area here. And that's the psoas, so another hip flexor that we can loosen there. This is tight in some people, it's not tight in others. It will feel quite different release, this one, from some of the others. So yeah, it shouldn't be too uncomfortable, but you might feel a little bit of discomfort there, but again, nowhere near as bad as the areas around here. So, to get into this anterior oblique area, then you start in the soft part of your abdomen. Move your arm out like that to open up your rib cage a bit, and then put it on your head, and then just move it in from the side and right into the side. Again, we're in a very familiar position as we have been for the other exercises, and just hold it there. It should feel like a fairly tight band of, like muscle. And it should just slowly begin kind of sinking in a little bit. The releases feel very different on the upper body. So I'm getting some nice little twitches in this area now. You might feel like this doesn't really do anything for you the first couple of times you do it. I would say this one does take a bit of practice, as do all of the myofascial release positions. They take a bit of practice to get just right, to get in a comfortable position and to master. So just let it sink in, just moving it slightly. You can take some deep breaths as well to help with the release. Okay, and once you've spent a bit of time there, when you you to go up onto both of the elbows like that, and then move it more towards the front, and then follow that bone down on the inside here. So follow it down. So now we come off the anterior obliques and we're moving into the psoas. Shuffling your way up, and you can go basically to where the top half of your body finishes off and your lower half of your body is going to start. So you'll know when you hit it. Okay, and go to the other side. And again, start on the side. So we're going to start kind of just to the side of your belly button in that little gap. Push the arm out, let it sink in, and then we're going to roll it into that gap. So you're almost on the side, almost directly on your side. And just watch that bottom lower rib. I said use a tennis ball in all these positions to begin with. Once you're comfortable, then you could go to a harder ball. Now, while I'm taking you through this position, let me explain that I think that doing myofascial release is actually much more beneficial than stretching. So once you know how to do this, it makes a big difference, and it will improve your range. It will reduce a bit of pain, and it will certainly help to get your muscles functioning better than stretching does. Stretching, particularly static stretching, has the disadvantage of lengthening some areas of your kinetic chains. Like I've talked about, we have connections between all the areas of our body with this fascia connecting the muscles together. They work in kinetic chains. So the problem with traditional stretching is that you're only stretching one part of that chain. So you're not getting a functional stretch throughout the chain, and it's not working together. Now, stretching will have some benefits for some people, and I'm sure they'll enjoy it, but I think myofascial release is definitely underdone with a lot of people. People don't really know how to do it. Another thing you might notice is that I don't use foam rollers either. So we're going to move into the psoas area now, so I'm just going to go towards the front. Foam rollers, I find they're not harsh enough for a start, and they're not specific enough. So like in an area like this, for example, you would not be able to hit it with a foam roller. It's just the area that you're trying to hit is too small. It's only the size, like the anterior obliques. To get in there, you do need a tennis ball size tool rather than a big, broad, much softer roller, which just won't get in there. Another problem with rollers is that I tend to find people end up in some funny positions. So they'll be doing things like this in a funny not a very relaxed position. So we just want to be as relaxed as you possibly can in every single position. So what we're doing is 2 minutes on each area here. So 2 minutes in between the top of the hip and the rib cage for the anterior obliques, and then 2 minutes for the psoas. As you go up the body, you will find that they just don't. There are some areas that don't need as much releasing, and you'll realise this because they're not that painful. So these will be different areas on different people probably. So you've got to kind of make up your own mind. So we're getting into we're in session 3 now of these myofascial releases, and they're going to mount up. So we could end up, especially if you go into some of the more non-essential areas, with like 20 to 30 different release points. And so you could spend all day doing this, but you might only have half an hour or an hour, and you've got to judge which areas you think are most beneficial for you, and you'll generally work that out by figuring out which bits are the most painful. Okay. Okay, next one are the abs. Again, I'm going to show you a couple of different ways of hitting this one. So this one's, again, one that you've got to avoid the bones. This one has a particularly dangerous one here. So you've got the top of your ribs, and then in the middle there's something called the xiphoid process in the middle. So this is a bit of bone that often gets broken when people have had to have CPR. So it's pretty fragile. So if you get a cricket ball and you put all your weight on it, it's probably not a good thing. So you probably get away with it with a tennis ball, but even then I wouldn't be so sure. So just stay away from that process. You can feel it there. It's right in the middle, so you just go to the side of that. So to the side of that, and we're going to start by just releasing the top of your abs here. Now you can release the whole area of your abdominal cavity, so from the lower abs to the side and all around. Now, I do find that this can be a bit uncomfortable for some people. So there's a lot of organs in this area, and the fascia isn't just connecting muscles, it's also holding up organs in like a web-like mesh. It's holding everything in place. And there are some specific areas of fascia that you can release here that can feel quite uncomfortable around your organs. So you can kind of play around with this if you like, but I think mainly focus on just underneath the ribs. And then if you've got a theracane, you can focus on just above the ribs here. Now the reason why I say you need a theracane for this is because you can't really put pressure with the ball on the top here. It needs to be much lighter because you've got abs at the top here as well. So your top of your rectus abdominis is here. So remember, when the rectus abdominis is tight, it's going to pull you into this kind of position. So we need to relieve some tension here. So a pretty simple one, this one. Just get to the side of the xiphoid process, just underneath the rib, and then just head on the hands, and just hold it there. And you can work this just underneath the rib cage all the way to the side. So for example, you can come around all the way down here. But I'm going to hang out just on that area next to the xiphoid process, just to the side, and just hang out there. Now I get 2 minutes each side of that. Now if you have a theracane, you can do that the very top where the ribs are, just show you that. Excuse me, I'll show you that one briefly. You can also use a bigger ball for your abdominal cavity, but like I said, this can get uncomfortable for some people, so you just let it sink in like that, and that will cover the abdominals much more broadly. But you might get that kind of uncomfortable feeling in your stomach, so I'd probably stay away from that to begin with, but it's something you can do. So with the Theracane then, so we've been working just underneath the rib here, the abdominals here, in this area, and then for this one we're going to work just above the rib, and there's just a small muscle on the top there, so you don't need a lot of pressure on that, but it's a good one to do if you do have this tool. And I've just got a nice release there, and I'm hardly holding it, it's just a very tiny bit of pressure down, because that's a small muscle with a lot of bone behind it, and it's quite difficult to find. Once you've got it, just very softly. But if you don't have Theracane, don't worry about it, just stick with the upper abdominal release here. Okay. Right, 2 more today, and that's the end of this session. So the first one we're going to do is another tricky one, lots of ribs in the way. We're going to do the lats, the latissimus dorsi here. So this is quite an important muscle in your gait cycle when you run and walk. So as you're pulling down your arm here, and this leg is coming through, so your lats are pulling down, and then they have a connection through your posterior obliques to your glute on the other side. So as you're pulling through here, you're actually pulling with your glute as well. So there's a connection between your lats and your glutes. And so to get good glute function, we also want to have good lat function. So this is a good area to release again. Now this can be a bit of a tricky one, particularly for women. So men have got more developed shoulder and shoulder area here, and obviously our lats are bigger, and so these are easier to locate here. And they sit kind of just to the back of your rib cage. So this can be a bit of an issue to find them. And we're going to start quite low, which is right next to the ribs. So you've got to be a little bit careful that you don't just go straight on the ribs for this one. So ladies, this might be a bit trickier for you, so definitely stick with the tennis ball to begin with, but I recommend that for everyone. So you're going to have your arm out like that. You can have it like that. This could be uncomfortable for some people with some shoulder issues. So we're just going to pop that under there, onto the soft tissue, but it's really close to the ribs, so this might take a bit of practice, this one. Just try and roll around the soft tissue of the lats, and this will go right up into your armpit. You might need to move this with your hand. Again, I find these areas of the upper body much more pleasant to release than other areas. Right up into your armpit area. Again, moving around a little bit, but not too much. So again, about 2 minutes aside, switch to the other side. bottom of the lats. Try and find that nice area of soft tissue. It's kind of difficult to find to begin with. And then settle into it. It's almost directly on your side, this one. And a little bit going back as well. Change the position of your arm if you like, so wherever comfortable, however is comfortable. So with all these myofascial release exercises, they're really good for everyone. So even if you're, I'm kind of pushing this to people who have a bit of chronic pain issues, so it's something that they can do themselves to try and sort this out, instead of going to a massage therapist and paying through the nose for it every time. You can just, once you've learned how to do this, it's free, so you can do it. It still doesn't mean that you can just forego the massage therapist. They may do a more thorough job than you, but at least you can get something happening, and that you can get some relief of pain and tension around your body. So I'm not just aiming it at people like that, I'm aiming it at even athletes. So athletes will have just the same problems. They're doing a lot of hard exercise every day. They're going to build up big areas of tension, and doing things like this regularly greatly reduce your injury risk, and it's definitely worth doing, and it will also improve your range, and I think you'll also get better functioning of those kinetic chains, those muscle groups, and I think it will actually improve your performance. So it's definitely worth trying, and you may also notice some relief of some chronic pain, because I know when I was a squash player, when I was playing a lot of squash, that I wasn't exactly pain-free playing it even when I was in my early 20s. So these are all great exercises to do if you've got time. A great thing to add to your repertoire of exercises and your injury prevention strategy, which you should all have if you're doing high-level sport. So we've got one more to go in this session, but we'll need a change of scenery because we're going to do the pecs, and this one is a little bit difficult to do just on the mat. So I'll change scene for this one. You're going to need a wall to lean into with your head poking through it. Alright, so you need a little gap in the wall to do the pecs and the biceps. So this is how you do it. So the pec release obviously just goes all around the pectoral here. So in this kind of almost like in the palm of your hand here, and you're just working it all the way around there. Quite a pleasant release, shouldn't be too painful. So you just pop it there and then just pop your head through and lean into it. Move it nice and slowly around. I'll just do one side here and you can do the 2 minutes on the other side. Quite an important area to release if you've got rounded shoulders or forward head posture or anything like that, because the pec here, when it's overly shortened and overly tensioned, it pulls your shoulders forward like that when it's tight. Okay, you might need to move it around with your hand a little bit. into it. You'll find that this will just kind of pop over the partitions between the muscle bundles. It'll actually feel kind of nice. As always with all these myofascial release exercises, don't go too harsh on it on the first go. Tennis ball's enough, and ease into it nice and slowly, and then you can punish yourself a bit more later on once you know what you're doing. Okay, so your 2 minutes done there, do your 2 minutes on the other side. So another good area to release is your biceps. So this starts from the top of the bicep here, and it just zigzags down like that. This is a classic one for the ball flying off and smashing into something, so don't have anything fragile around for this one. So you just pop that there, and you lean into it like that, and just turn your arm so that the ball gets the outside of the bicep, and then turn it that way to get the inside of the bicep. So with all the upper body releases, you have to start getting quite creative or use some different tools to hit some of these areas. Bicep release is probably quite a good one for older men. A lot of older men tear their bicep muscle as they get when they get older. So this is a nice one to relieve tension on. As you get older, the bicep gets shortened and shortened and shortened, and then when you lift something really heavy and overstretch it, pop! It tends to tear as you get old, and when your muscles are less elastic, less stretchy. And then obviously you can see how my position changes as I go further down the arm here. Okay, success. I've managed not to drop the ball. That was a good effort. But we can do one more on this using this kind of breaking the ball here, and that's your traps at the top here, trapezius. So pop the ball against the wall, and then we're just going to lean into it. You can also do this with a theracane. I'll show you this as well if you've got one of those little tools. This hits it pretty well. So the trapezius is going to be an area that's going to be very tender in a lot of people who have rounded shoulders and forward head posture. So again, like always, go easy on it to begin with, because you can definitely overdo it, and then gradually make it harder on yourself until you're really putting quite a bit of pressure through the ball and maybe using a harder ball. So if you can't see exactly where the ball is there, this is hitting, I'm probably going this far up my neck, and this is following down to around about here, so all along this area. So that's 2 minutes on each of those, on each side. So hopefully you've got somewhere that you can lean through in your house or somewhere else outside, maybe at a park or something, and you can do those three myofascial release exercises. I'll also show you some stuff with the theracane that you can use for some of these areas too.